In the heart of the unforgiving Antarctic ice, a stout ship, the Endurance, finds herself ensnared by nature's icy grasp. As the crew braces against the bone-chilling cold, Ernest Shackleton, their unyielding leader, gazes into the endless white abyss, knowing that the indomitable spirit of adventure will be their only hope of survival in the harrowing odyssey that lies ahead. This is Casual History. Hey, Jeffrey, welcome back. What is up, my man?
I'm happy to be a guest on this podcast.
You happy to sit back and let me do the story this time?
I am. I'm quite excited to sit back and learn rather than lead the charge, which is just an extra pressure, you know?
It is. It's a little bit extra pressure. And knowing us and me in particular, I like to, especially when we have night pods like this, we get a little bit more dicey with how I pronounce things. So it's going to be a very fun podcast.
And what we talk about and how far we go down a myth or
true
conspiracy.
Yeah. So it is definitely a night pod. So anything goes, you know, it's just like Vegas. You know, what happens on night pod stays on night pod.
Well, there's a lot to talk about, I'm sure, with this podcast from that intro. There's not too much to go over for those listening in regards to casual history information. There is one note I did want to bring up. Jacob, I saw a few comments about if we did have merch that they would support, which is pretty cool.
Really?
So just something to think about as we're going along.
Yeah, I posted a picture this weekend because my wife's been wearing the test shirt that I made as a limited run that I posted earlier. So I'm excited that people love that. That's so awesome.
Is that weird to say your wife in context?
It's weird to say it like on the podcast in that context. Yes, but not really, because you know I could call her by her first name, but I won't do that on the podcast, Jeffrey. You know, we got to keep some things.
You don't want to dox her.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
So that was pretty cool. And then last, I just want to say great response to the last episode. Thanks everyone for really following through. It looks like people really listened all the way through, which is really cool to see when we get to that hour and 10 mark.
I know. It's a lot, but man, I'm thankful for all of you guys sticking with us. And I'm excited, Jeffrey, because as well as the last podcast went last week, I had kind of like one issue with it, really. And the one was just, I wish it had more boats. And
you wish it had more boats?
Yeah. So with that in mind, I kind of centered my entire podcast around boats. So I hope you're ready for that.
Everyone just turns off the podcast.
Just right now. Just, you know what? That's it. I'm out.
Yeah.
No, it's about one boat in particular, Jeffrey. So I don't know how much you know about this story based off the intro.
Specifically, a boat or people on the boat?
It's a story about the boat and the people that sail the boat. So it's about all of it, but it's really centered around a boat.
Yeah, we're not going back to pirates. It sounds like we're doing a different kind of boat adventure. Survival story?
Yes, exactly, a survival story. This is going to be a very harrowing journey I'm about to take you on, Jeffrey. Are you prepared? Do you have your snowshoes?
I'm prepared, and I think what we should do for fun, this is off the dome here.
Yeah, well, come on.
At any point in the journey, like the key points in the journey, I think we should stop and just think about what we would do in that situation, and then continue the story to see how it lines up with the actual events that happened. Because I don't know this story personally.
Okay. Yeah, for sure. We should do that. And I'll stop, and we can stop me anytime when you're like, listen, this is a really big key point, because I'm interested to see what you would do in these situations. Because I don't know if you grew up that way. I did. Like, that's where my mind always went whenever I watched like really like crazy survival stories, like whether just on TV or, they used to have those little shows that show little clips of that. Or just the 127 Hours movie, which I know you remember, Jeffrey.
Vividly. I watched it too young. And I always, from then on, when I hit my funny bone and my arm would do that weird feeling, I would freak out.
Yeah. And so every time I watched one of those shows, I would always picture myself and be like, okay, how would I handle that? Would I be the person that would fold or do something like really heroic and find a way out? And so I'm interested to see what your opinion is too.
Yeah. Let's get into it.
All right, awesome. So let's just dive right in. So, in the era where the poles remained the last uncharted territories, the icy call of Antarctica beckoned the bravest souls. Among them was Sir Ernest Shackleton, a seasoned polar explorer fueled by a vision to venture beyond the known bounds. So, rural Amundsen and Robert Scott had already reached the South Pole in 1914. So, if Ernest Shackleton was going to leave his mark, he would have to do something different. His aim was audacious, a transcontinental journey across the harsh, icy wilderness of Antarctica. Um, this trip, just to put it in perspective, the trip was so lengthy that Shackleton would need two teams to complete it. One would leave from South America, the other would leave from Tasmania to land on the opposite side of the continent along the Ross Sea.
Mm.
Those you can't see it right now, but I actually pulled up a map for Jeffrey to take a look at too, just because I know with this story this is going to be really important, and so that'll be something I'll also be posting along with this pod is this actual map of their voyage too.
And so I'm aware at this point in time, according to mainstream history and geography and whatever other
Yeah.
titles, Antarctica was not explored at
Right.
this point.
Well, people had sailed to it and around it, but no one had like traversed across the entire continent of Antarctica. No. So
Can
that's what he was
I
venturing to do.
input the conspiracy theory right off the jump? Is that allowed or should I wait?
You're already going to derail. Go ahead, man. Listen, that's
I
what this
don't,
podcast is for. Bring it.
we've talked about this a long time ago, and I think we've
Yes.
both watched documentaries about this, but the Piri Reis map. Do you know what
Dude,
I'm referencing there?
I know the name, but please refresh my memory because I don't know off the top of my head.
We did talk about this, but it was like when we first started the podcast, I believe, but about how the Piri Reis map had shown. So essentially, it was created off the backs of 20 or so different maps at the time when the Piri Reis map was made, allegedly.
Okay.
And on this map, there seems to be, from what you can tell of what was laid out on the map, Antarctica was put on the map.
That's
and
right.
This would be at a time where there should be no knowledge of Antarctica, according to like mainstream, history folks. So,
Jeffrey, you need to do a whole podcast on that alone. Like that, I would be in for a full hour of that because I do remember that has triggered that memory for me. And now I remember, yeah, there is like some really crazy map taking that has, I think, didn't those same maps have some form of America on it too? That they're just like, we have no idea.
No, yeah. There was a few different points of reference that, again, there's some conjecture just about like what was on the map, and you're trying to figure out where technically, like what they're describing,
right,
is South America, I believe, and then underneath it there seemed to be Antarctica, and they basically can't explain it, and it's kind of this myth of, well, that seems to point to there being an older map that did have Antarctica listed on the map and that it was known, and but we don't need to go into that too heavy now. I know we're on this survival story based
how's that pertain to this
around
podcast, Jeffrey? Come on.
Well, we're talking about Antarctica, right?
Okay. Yeah, that's true. That's true.
I thought maybe, we should, I don't know. It seemed interesting to me.
I appreciate it.
When you say not discovered, I just want to put out there, hey, there's some myth around there. We don't know that that's true. Yeah. But we'll act like Shackleton is the first person. Sure.
Yeah, he's not the first person. He'll be the first person to trek if his plan goes according to plan, which it always does, which is why there's a podcast on this right now. But he's going to plan to cross the entire continent for the first time ever. So that's going to be his stamp, like his legacy. When he dies, that's going to be on his tombstone. And so that's kind of what this whole story is centered around. But like the genesis of this daring adventure began with assembling a crew of capable crew of facing brutal Antarctic conditions. So selecting the right men was a colossal task. Shackleton went through a staggering 5,000 applications, each representing a glimmer of hope. So with discernment, he sorted them into three major categories: mad, hopeless, or possible, showcasing the unique challenge that lay ahead. So kind of a funny little tidbit there that I didn't know about. But like those three categories, I think you could probably put almost anybody in the world in those three categories.
I think it's a good
I like it.
personality test, you know?
Me too. I
I
think we should
wonder
use
what
that more
questions
often.
he asked.
But yeah, so like after 5,000 applicants, right? People, first of all, getting 5,000 people to say, yes, sign me up. I want to risk my life in the barren wilderness abyss of Antarctica. Pretty wild in itself. The fact that he even had to create a category is interesting. But out of those 5,000 people, chosen were 27 unyielding souls, forming the crew of the Endurance. They were a medley. They had a medley of expertise and courage. So it encompassed a photographer, an artist, two surgeons, a biologist, a geologist, a physicist, or sorry, a physicist, um, several carpenters, a dog handler, and a host of seasoned sailors and navigators. So a lot of people, but they had a wide array of expertise, which is how like if I was putting together like a crew, that's where I'd be going to. I want every skill on board as possible.
Yeah.
Um,
2 is 1 and 1 is 2. So I'd get at least 2 of each, 2 to 3 of each.
two of each, just in case you lose one, you know?
For sure.
One is expendable. You don't know which one until the actual thing happens.
100%.
So every individual was a critical piece to the expedition's puzzle, selected for their unique skills and unwavering spirit, and their camaraderie would be the beacon in the relentless cold that awaited them. Their vessel, the Endurance, was a marvel designed to brave the Arctic conditions with its thick, rounded hull, ready to challenge the ice. As the day of the departure arrived, they sailed from Gatviken whaling station, marking the beginning of a long detachment from solid ground that would last 497 days. The Endurance journeyed southward, crossing the Antarctic Circle, and as they ventured into the cold embrace of the Antarctic ice. Um, First of all, I wouldn't sign up for this. I just wouldn't. I'm much more of a warm person than a cold person. I don't know if you can say the same, Jeff.
I just wonder what the ad looked like.
Yeah, me too. Like, what do you post there? Willing, I guess you just like play it as you want to make history, man. Like that wouldn't gravitate towards you. You know, hey, you want to make a mark and a legacy for you and your kids. Like, I guarantee you might be signing up. You'd at least give it a second look.
No, I think for sure, like I'm reading another book about discovery of Monte Picchu, and like it's around the same time and about there is this sense of adventure, and so a call to adventure to explore. That's something I
Yeah,
think we don't think about a lot. Is there was a period of time where, at least in the mainstream, we didn't know a lot about the Earth and
yeah.
where things were,
You think we know a
and
lot about the Earth now?
I
No, we
think we
do.
know a lot more. I think we can,
Yeah,
satellites kind of took away a lot of the mystery
that's
of
true.
what is out there.
When you
The
can find
ocean
your
is,
apartment from a satellite, yeah, it's over.
yeah, I can see my friend on Google View, through the car.
Right.
So, um, yeah, no, I think if I was born during this time, I'd like to think I'd have the same need for adventure, and that I don't know that I'd do this particular
Yeah.
adventure,
Why
but
not, Jeff? This seems like a great opportunity.
I mean, honestly, the thing is, I'm not completely not sold about it because part of me wants to do, trekking and climbing in this sort of
Right.
manner. So what's wrong with doing it on the ocean and then trekking through some cold and freezing
Right.
weather? I
Just
don't
a
know.
desolate wasteland of ice. Yeah, why
Yeah,
not?
why not?
Um, So, with that being said, the shores of England faded into the horizon as the icy winds of the southern hemisphere propelled them forward. With every nautical mile, the Endurance and her crew ventured further into the heart of the vast and great terrestrial mystery, led by Shackleton's unwavering resolve. The silence of Antarctica mirrored the vast unknown as the men of the Endurance sailed deeper into the icy abyss, ready to etch their names in the history books. As the Endurance sailed through the icy waters of the Weddell Sea, the crew was teeming with anticipation and the spirit of adventure. Underneath Shackleton's seasoned leadership, they were journeying into the frozen, uncharted wilderness with the goal of crossing the Antarctic continent. However, the merciless ice of the Weddell Sea had other plans. So this is where trouble sneaks in, Jeffrey.
As
And we're going to
always.
start to get into the survival aspect.
It
Um,
always happens in the Weddell Sea.
in the Weddell Sea. I know. Also really fun to say.
Sounds like
So
you're saying little with a W.
it might as well be. It's Weddell, Weddell. So I mean, I don't
Yeah.
know how to say it any other way. I think that's
No, I
correct.
think you're doing great. It's amusing.
So come December 1914, the reality of their perilous situation began to crystallize. Get it, Jeffrey? Crystallize? uh, the Endurance found themselves ensnared in the deadly grip of an ice pack. So, unable to move forward in Vassal Bay, their planned landing site, now they were in true trouble. They were less than 100 miles from land, but it didn't matter. Um, he would have to wait until the ice melted before he could reach the continent, which could take months. So imagine surviving in the Antarctic cold for months, Jeffrey. That's what they're facing after
They're
getting
hunting
close.
seals, I assume, or fish.
We're definitely going to get into that, which is where I'm going to stop because I want to see if you would do some of these things in here. It's about to get a little
Cannibalism.
crazy. Um, I can't spoil it, Jeffrey. I can't spoil it before we get there. Uh, but as the day turned into nights, the ship drifted helplessly, carried northward by the ice throughout the Antarctic winter of 1915. So the men on board could only watch as their hopes of reaching the continent started to wane. As if being stuck wasn't bad enough, Shackleton also had to prepare for the possibility that the pressure being exerted by the ice would evidently just crush the ship. Um, so he decided to remove weight from the vessel, hopefully hoping that it would rise in the event the ice pushed it together. If
Hmm.
that didn't work, the ship would just simply be crushed, which would obviously be devastating for the crew. Um,
So this is at the first point. Like they just started
yes, so
and they
they are
got immediately
just
trapped in ice.
yes, so they immediately got right up close to the continent and then they got stuck in an ice pack where their ship could no longer move. Which I don't know if you've ever seen those shows, Jeffrey, but like where you see, the ice fishermen and stuff like that. Like
Hmm.
this is stuff where they have to build ships specifically for that to be able to like push that ice out. But
Right.
again, we're talking about 1900s, a wooden ship.
Yeah. And without any, I would obviously without any tools to figure out that that's what they were headed for because they left from the whaling station and tried to head down. I'm looking at the map just
Yeah.
so I understand. They obviously went down to try to hit the Queen Maudland. Got it. Okay. And they got immediately hit
Yes.
with ice.
Yep.
That's tough.
Exactly.
It's a string of bad luck there, Jake.
Yeah, that's only going to continue. So, but they actually did build the ship. Like after reading this, they built the ship with that in mind. They knew they were going to encounter ice,
Hmm.
but it was just so bad where they got sailed and then it froze so fast around them that they just immediately got stuck either
Yeah.
way. And so, just bad luck. Honestly, it's not like they weren't prepared. They just didn't have the right tools necessary.
Right.
Um, so, with that being said, the underwater sea currents exerted incredible forces, pulling both the ice and Shackleton's ship miles from shore. So, not only that, not only are they stuck, like, being able to see land but can't get to it, but also the ice is pushing them backwards out to sea. And so, like, pulling them farther from their destination. And so,
Yeah.
things are already going for the worse right off the bat. So the frequent blizzards and freezing winds didn't help either. So there was a lots of bad weather going on during this time. The eerie silence of the Antarctic expanse was stark contrast to the bustling activity aboard the Endurance. The camaraderie amongst the crew was their only shield against the creeping dread of the unknown. Um, Days morphed into a timeless abyss as they tirelessly worked to free their ship from the ice's grasp. But the Endurance seemed to be living up to her name. Yet, the crushing force of the ice was a relentless foe, and it was a silent predator, slowly tightening its deadly grip around the vessel that was their only hope for survival. As weeks turned into months, Jeffrey, out here on the ice, the grim reality of their situation was settling in. The dream of crossing the Antarctic, had morphed into a dire fight for survival. The cruel irony of their ship's name, the Endurance, wasn't lost on them either as they braced themselves for the harsh Antarctic winter that awaited. They were now not in a battle against time, but against nature's unforgiving wrath, a battle that would test the very essence of human endurance and the indomitable spirit of adventure that had led them into the heart of the icy abyss.
Wow. Powerful stuff. I just want to say, you leading us into ad break without giving the warning that we're leading into ad break and
Is
ending
it
on me
brilliant?
saying powerful stuff
Powerful stuff?
made me feel out of the loop, but it's okay. I think,
Come on,
the
man.
story's worth it.
You got to be on your toes, just like Shackleton and his crew, man. You got to be always waiting for what's coming up.
I'm going to be ready now, and I'm going to try to time my one-liners a bit better.
Okay. That'll be good. That'll be good. I actually really enjoyed it, even though, we were going into the ad.
Yeah. So we left off.
Yes.
They got stuck in ice in February to October, basically, of 1915, and they've been drifting for months now, which is insane to think about. I have a thought right off the top, and
go ahead.
Maybe you have an answer, maybe you don't. Maybe I need to look it up. Why didn't, if there was ice all the way around them, could they not walk to the continent
and leave the ship behind?
I mean, if it's drifting, I don't know. Never mind. That's not a smart plan, but I just figured, if that's what they were there to do.
Maybe
that
you
doesn't
have
make
some
any
foresight.
sense at all, does
maybe
it?
You have some foresight, Jeffrey. Maybe stuff is going to go down that that's going to force them to have to walk on the ice instead of hanging out with their ship. Maybe they're a little something.
And they're surviving, I assume, at this point off of just rations and what they brought with them, or they're hunting.
Yes, so they're still very prepared, but still, this is definitely an unforeseen detour that they were not expecting to make.
Yeah,
so
they're probably eating to the provisions. Years, don't you? Like, you got to have enough food. Like, what are you taking it in 1915? That I guess jerky. Like, what do you? Dried meat.
Something that just cannot go bad. Like exactly that. I just imagine like hordes of jerky. I actually want to do some research on that.
Yeah.
Like what kind of food was like the best prep for like going on long I almost said ship rides, but I guess that's correct. But,
ship rides.
On a quick little ship ride.
I assume that they're eating seal and or fish if they can try to get to water at any, if they can, I don't know, maybe that's not real, but
maybe. But yeah, so that's kind of where we left off, right? Is they're drifting backwards now. They got so close to the continent, they could touch it, and then the ice packed them in, and then it's starting to drift them away from the continent already. And so they're kind of going backwards.
So enter October 1915.
Exactly. So Shackleton and his crew could now only wait. And wait they did for 6 long, cold months. 6 months on a ship trapped in ice, Jeff. By the end of October, the ship had sustained significant damage to its stern. Within a few days, it was obvious that the Endurance wasn't going to make it. The ship groaned and creaked under the pressure, and with a final heart-wrenching shudder, it succumbed to the ice, sinking to the icy depths of the Whittle Sea. Yes, the Whittle Sea. Which I'm going to laugh every time now. That's perfect.
Yeah.
So they lost their ship, Jeff. It's over. Their whole ship, bye.
Wow.
So with the loss of the Endurance, any hope of completing the original mission just kind of went out the window. Shackleton's sole focus then became getting his men back to civilization. And it wasn't going to be easy. The ship had drifted 1,186 miles and 281 days, Jeffrey. So just kind of put that in perspective.
Yeah.
Sitting on a ship in the ice. That put the team about 350 miles from remote Paulet Island, the nearest outpost that could provide shelter and supplies. The group salvaged as much as they could before the ship sank. So they knew this was coming, right? They were hearing the groans. They were like, the Endurance is not going to make it much longer. We need to salvage whatever we can for survival purposes from the ship. And so they did the smart thing, right? This sounds so far like all smart things to do if you want to live. So they salvaged a bunch, but with their supplies decreasing, they were forced to supplement their diets by eating seals and even penguins. So you are right on the money, Jeff. So that they didn't at first. They were still working in their provisions, but now it's gotten to that dire straits that they're like having to hunt and really supplement their food with that.
Poor penguins, man.
I know those poor penguins didn't know what hit them.
I wonder, and this is a horrible thing to wonder. Maybe it's not horrible.
What,
I wonder what penguin tastes like.
dude?
Like, is it just blubber?
I don't know, man.
You know,
Does it
like
taste
fat
like any other? It
and
can't taste like any other bird. It's got to be. Yeah, you're
oh, it's
right.
definitely got to have its own thing. You know,
Yeah,
same with
that's
seals, but I know that for some reason seals seems like in all of history and like knowing of tribes that live in the cold, like that's part of their just way of life.
yes.
So, but penguins, I don't know if I've maybe that is too, but that
I
seems
don't know,
odd.
man. But like on this continent where there's only a few animals to choose from, you have slim pickings. You don't
Well,
have like
they're
a
just
fleet
on
of
an ice
animals.
shelf right now, right? Like they're not even on
Yeah,
land, so they're just finding whatever other animals are out there with them, which is crazy.
exactly. So they're just out on this ice sheet that literally at any point could break up and sink underneath them, but they're
Yeah.
standing on it. Um, so they spent almost a month salvaging before the ship finally disappeared beneath the icy water. Once it was gone, they headed out. Shackleton's plan was to march across the ice to the northern tip of Antarctica. And if the ice broke apart, they would take the lifeboats that they salvaged from the Endurance. So they did have lifeboats, and they had to like carry them with they had dogs. Obviously, they have a
Yeah.
fleet of dogs with them, but also just themselves, like in a line with two ropes. I saw some actual pictures of them dragging this boat across the ice shelf. So they're not even on solid land. They're
That
just they're just
photographer
on
is still doing his job.
dude, still doing his job. And that's why I'm so excited too, because like these pictures put it all in perspective. It's one thing to read about it and like hear it, but like as you're watching like these pictures and like the real actual events of the ship and everything else, it is absolutely wild. So I'm excited to share that with you guys too. Um, so yeah, once okay, so let me see. Yeah, so once the ship sank, the mission was over, right? They just decided we're scrapping it. We're fully going into survival mode. Um, and once that main mission was over, the sled dogs' days were numbered. So yeah, Jeffrey, you know where this is going. Not only were they potential food, but the dogs actually consumed more meat than the men did, which made them a liability. So, on October 20th of 1915, Shackleton's second in command, Frank Wild, shot 5 of the dogs and the expedition's cat. And by January 30th, um, a bunch more of the dogs had been killed. And then on March 30th, the last of the dogs were consumed. So they had to go through all of the animals that were on board. So that's where I'm going to stop and say, Jeffrey, would you do it? Could you do it?
Could I kill and eat the animal to survive in this situation? Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
This
Would you eat dog in this situation?
this is such a win-win. I'm gonna get canceled.
Canceled?
Nah,
Dude,
I
this is
can't.
survival, man.
Yeah, that's. I mean, I think that's what it is. I would.
Yeah,
I have a hard time thinking about that. Obviously, now and where
of
I'm,
course.
my position in that dire position, I would like to think that I would do what needed to be done if that's what it was required. And that's definitely what was required. It seems like it's not like they were out here
No.
doing it because they, had other options. So
Exactly. It was either this or they could potentially die from starvation. So,
no, they
I
would.
agree.
Yeah, there's no
Yeah.
potential. It doesn't seem like,
Yeah,
you're
that
out here
I
for 6 months, 8 months at this point in time. You have no food left. You're hunting, and you do start to think of,
all options.
all options. And that's why I'm curious, does this go as far as human?
Oh, well, we're about to find out. That photographer, though, he's at
No,
his job.
no,
So they all turned on the photographer. No,
no, that's
um,
wrong.
no. So I won't spoil it for you, but we continue on. But just to like put mine too, so you're not the only opinion out there. I think if backed into a corner, as much as it would like be the worst thing in the world, like if it was that or me dying, I think I would have to. I think I would have to do what needed to be
It's
done.
a self-preservation gene.
Yeah, man. I think that kicks in somewhere. Like my like natural brain right now would be like absolutely not under no circumstances. But put me in Antarctica, with 28 other people who are fighting for food and supplies.
You
I,
better
I,
tell
I
that
don't
to
know,
your
man.
to your two dogs you got now.
No,
Yeah,
you
tell them,
don't
hey
tell them. You
kids,
can't. Listen.
if I took you out in the Antarctic with me and shit went down, just know.
Dude, that's rough. Don't do that. Don't put that. That's on the pod. That lives forever. Thanks.
I'm just saying, you said it.
I didn't say nothing. You said it. You presented the idea, and I would say no.
Yeah.
But
So
yeah,
they're
but
out. They're out of the ship. They're walking, hauling
yes,
the lifeboats. They're killing off the animals as they go to survive. What happens?
yes, exactly. And at this point, too, the men were so hungry and desperate that they didn't even care what they were really eating. Um, but Shackleton knew that to survive, they had to keep moving. With 3 lifeboats salvaged from the Endurance, they set out on a perilous journey across the ice floes towards the uninhabited Elephant Island. Um, the journey was a Herculean task, dragging the boats over rough, jagged ice during the day and huddling together for warmth during the freezing nights. So, yeah, you talk about you got to be close with people. You don't go on a voyage like this without really getting to know your crewmates.
Well, the fact that they
Unfortunately,
know where they're going is really
yeah,
something that's maybe not as mentioned, but like they're navigating this and they're able to know where they're at for survival.
yeah,
Like they know where they're headed for survival. They're not just out here wandering
exactly.
into it, you know?
And a lot of it is like the stuff that I read is really crediting Shackleton and his leadership abilities. Like instead of panicking of like, oh my God, what are we going to do? Right. They had to go for a game plan and stick to it at all costs. Right. Now it's full on survival. We're not worried about what we initially came here to do. And so there's a lot of writing about like how Shackleton, his attitude and how he led the group of men really is what, you know, led them down this path of being like, okay, no one's panicking. We are just
Yeah.
moving towards a goal.
Some
Um,
hard men.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Um, so yeah, so that's what they were doing during the nights. But it wouldn't be until April that there would be breaks in the significant ice enough to allow the men to navigate their lifeboats in open water. Though they were initially hoping to use the boats to reach Deception Island, the frequent exposure to the freezing salt water exhausted the men. So instead, on April 15th, they put to shore. They put ashore on a 7-mile long beach of Elephant Island, a small island off the northwesternmost peninsula of Antarctica. It was the first time Shackleton and his men had stood on lands in 497 days. Jeff, talk about
Mm.
getting your sea legs underneath you.
Mm.
Um, sure, it was very, very hard to walk, and also like I'd be kissing the ground at that point. Um, so this was the safest they had been in months. Camping on dry land was exponentially safer than camping on an ice floe that could break apart literally at any moment in time. Um, After assessing the situation, Shackleton eventually concluded that the only way to save his men would be to reach the South Georgia island and return with help. So that's where this map is going to really come into and some handy. And so, unfortunately, that island was over 900 miles away across some of the most turbulent oceans on the face of the earth. And that's saying something. And all of Shackleton had was a 20-foot long lifeboat. So, not the best circumstances. So, still in very, very rough territory where it's a little dicey out. Um, as if that wasn't hard enough, finding the tiny outpost that measured just 100 miles long and 20 miles wide would require exact navigation. Only using a chronometer and a sextant, the lifeboat was fitted with a mast and loaded up with a month's worth of supplies. Why just a month? Well, Shackleton reasoned that by then he should have succeeded or died. So, along with 5 other men, he set sail on April 24th. Frank Wild was left in command of the rest of the 22 men who stayed and left behind. So again, Shackleton still doing his leadership duties, being like, "Listen, it's I'm going for a month. If I don't make it past a month, then that's just the end for me, and good luck." But he's going to get help. Um, all right. So if Shackleton didn't return by the following spring, the plan was that they would try to reach an uninhabited whaling outpost on Deception Island. So another island close to them as well. Shackleton's ship traveled about 60 miles a day, and the sailors were quickly drenched by the rough seas. They would spend the next few weeks wet, frostbitten, their skin raw, and continuously irritated by the seawater. That's also something I didn't really realize, but makes total sense when you're out there on the ocean. Like, regardless of warm or hot, like that seawater irritating your skin. So it was super uncomfy as well as incredibly trying and cold.
Super uncomfy is a good way to describe it.
Yeah, that's probably putting it in the most mild terms possible.
It was just really uncomfortable. Just super uncomfy.
Yeah, super uncomfy.
but they rode 60 miles a day in some of the most treacherous waters.
Yeah, known to man or the earth. It's fine.
Wow,
it's fine. Yeah. So on the fifth day, though, they were hit by a powerful gale that threatened to capsize the ship and brought cold temperatures that froze the water on the boat in heavy layers. So this ice needed to be constantly chipped off, and any excess weight, including their frozen sleeping bags, spare oars, had to be tossed overboard to maintain speed. So again, things are just not going right every single turn here of this journey. But on the seventh day, funny enough, and that cracks me up because I immediately think of the Bible on the seventh day, the sun came out, by which point they had traversed about 350 miles. So, against all odds, Shackleton and his crew reached the shores of South Georgia, a beacon of hope in a desolate, cold world at this point. Yet, his ordeal was far from over. They also had to traverse across the rugged, glacier-covered terrain to reach the whaling station. Finally, just 14 days after leaving Elephant Island, the crew spotted the South Georgia island. You'd think it'd be celebration time, but the team couldn't find a suitable area to land. So they had to spend yet another night enduring hurricane-force conditions on their tiny boat. And then the next day, they finally made landfall at King Haakon Bay. So they reached the island of their destination, but due to the storm and just whatever miscalculations that they had, they were on an opposite side of where the actual outpost was. So they still weren't there, even though they were on the right island, which it had to be brutal after all of this. So to kind of explain a little bit more, King Haakon Bay sits on the unsettled southern side of the island. With a rudder broken and their ship leaking, the team didn't think that they could reach the other side of the island in that boat. Instead, they would have to cross on foot. This meant an unprecedented journey that would require traversing rocks, ice, and glaciers that reach 5,000 feet in elevation, all in deep snow. So how do you think you'd be dealing with this at this point, Jeffrey?
I would be fine. I'd just be peak condition. I'd be running. I'd be sprinting.
Dude.
No, I think it probably would have died back out in the water during like that. The worst thing for me on a lost at sea adventure would be the lost at sea part.
For sure.
Like anything else that we're talking about, living on the ice sheet, horrible. Okay, this would be tough. But what would get me would be, I'm going to be one of the 5 men who sails 60 miles a day in the open ocean, and there's going to be thunderstorms at night that's going to try to flip our ship. There's going to be huge waves. Like that part for me, I'm like, nah, I'm good. Like I'm out.
Dude, pitch black darkness had to be, besides maybe, even if they had candle, like I don't even know if they had lights
not doing
at this
that
point.
Out there. No.
Dude,
so,
it's...
Yeah. Once we reach land, I'm like, okay, this seems doable. Like the will to win to survive seems
just being
within
on solid
my reach.
ground would be enough motivation for me, even if I was like really running low. Or you could be one of the 22 men just waiting to be rescued. So whatever, maybe if I reach that island part, I just might be like, hey, I'm good here. Good luck. Send help.
Right.
I'm just gonna camp it out.
That seems almost. Does it seem like the safer place to be? Right. Like. Would you volunteer, or you think this? You've been out here for 8 months, 9 months, 6 months, whatever, and you're saying, all right, a team of us are going to try to go, or going to try to make it to rescue, and then we'll send word back for you. Like, would you want to be on that first out of men who go, well, I'm either going to be left here to die potentially,
right,
or I'm going to have a chance at being rescued within the next couple weeks?
I mean, you're not faced with really good choices, right? So you're either exactly right. You're like, hey, I'm putting my life in the hands of 5 men, just hoping that they make it and don't completely miss the island and just die somehow, which could be very easily done in this kind of situation? Or
Boat
do you chance it
capsizes. Yeah.
and yeah, or do you chance it yourself and hop on that boat, right? Knowing that like you could literally die on the way there. Like
Right.
even also
Yeah.
just thinking about the time, it's the 1900s here. Like even just them sailing to Antarctica took a really long time. Imagine when they finally get to somebody who has a boat that can come get them. Like how long will it take? How much longer would those people have to survive before they got to them, right?
Yeah.
And so
So,
there's a
what
lot of
answer?
factors.
What would you do?
Uh, Dude,
Would you be a part of the small group of men, or would you wait behind for a rescue?
my fear of the ocean would probably keep me from hopping in a little dingy boat and being like, "Good luck."
Yeah.
Dude, yeah, I think I'm in love with the ground too much to. I don't know, man. I'm just not a big fan of like the sea. Not a
You
fan of
can
the
you
sea.
hey
That's pretty
hey hey.
broad.
You can stand behind your answer. It's okay. You can
Yeah,
say you're gonna wait for help.
I would
That's
probably wait
okay.
for help and knowing that there's other people around me that could like we could all band together ultimately for that. But like I think you're still in the same life threatening situation either way.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
go, you're threatening your life. If you stay, maybe no help comes, but at least you have some other people. And
Right.
so I don't know, man. I just wouldn't want to die out in the middle of the ocean um, in the freezing cold. That just doesn't sound like the way I want to go.
I agree.
um,
So they make it to the whaling station, or they make it to the island. Now they have to trek
yes.
across, and they do, I assume.
Yes, so they do make it, but obviously, like through really really hard battles. I don't have it written down here, but I was reading a little bit of like they had to like climb down waterfalls. Like it was like a whole ordeal. So not only like oh my god we made it to land, but they have to hike that kind of like to be able for your body. Like I'm just imagining your body not just fully wanting to just say, I give up. Like I'm raising my hand here.
Hmm.
But you know, that for survival like instinct is really, really strong. And I hope that I, would have that too, that just be like, listen, you gotta get to civilization somehow. So they did make it. Their clothes were filthy, tattered, and all three had long hair and beards at this point. Um, like when they got through that area and they got close to the station, they actually ran into two children on their way and they got some predictably amusing responses by how they looked. Um, Shackleton asked the children for the station manager by name, at which point the kids' eyes went wide with fear. They turned and ran the opposite direction. Um, so, exhausted, frostbitten, but with spirits unbroken, they stumbled into the station, marking their first steps into the improbable rescue of the remaining crew back on Elephant Island. So that's really like, again, like I can't only imagine that entire situation happening. But lucky for them, they got to the station and they were able to send word back um, to try to rescue the rest of the 22 people on their crew.
To try, or they did?
That's where we're going next. So like we can just kind of continue on into this.
Yeah.
So upon their arduous arrival at Stormness whaling station on the South Georgia island, Shackleton quickly organized a rescue mission for the 22 men left on Elephant Island. The unforgiving Arctic waters thwarted his initial rescue attempts, though. However, Shackleton's resolve remained unbroken. So, after three failed attempts due to the impenetrable ice, it was the fourth rescue attempt, orchestrated by the aid of the Chilean government, led by Captain Luis Pardo Valion aboard the Yelcho, a very fun name for a boat as well. That was successfully ended up reaching Elephant Island and they ended up rescuing all of the men on August 30th, 1916. So the joy and relief on the faces of those stranded men were probably indescribable as they saw the Yelcho approach. Their hopes of survival completely reignited. So they did. So they all made it, Jeffrey. They all survived
That's really
incredibly.
insane. Two
Um,
years after their departure.
Right. Yeah. Just like huddling there, hoping that, help was coming to get them. Again, like you're talking about the 1900s, where even if word got to somebody, like how long does it take to sail there? And so,
I
and
just mean from the start of the expedition.
right,
Like 2 years is a lot of time. Like so much has happened, obviously, as we just talked about.
dude,
Um,
you
I
would
just
not,
wonder. I wonder what they. they came out of their thinking, came out of their wanting, or,
Yeah.
I just wonder if any of them had families, if any of them ended up, I don't know. I just wonder where they ended up now.
Yeah, that's a good question. Because I don't have like the backstories on all 22, but I do kind of have like the ending too and the conclusion of um our leader Shackleton here. So exactly 5 years later, on January 4th of 1922, shortly after arriving back on South Georgia Island, he suffers a fatal heart attack, and so he actually died there. His wife requested that he be buried in a small cemetery on that island where he still rests to this day.
Wow.
So the legacy of the Endurance expedition transcends exploration. The unwavering leadership of Shackleton, the camaraderie of the crew, and their collective spirit in the face of life threatening adversity had become emblematic of human resilience. Um, and the boundless capacity of a unified group to overcome the bleakest of circumstances. So that's kind of my conclusion there. I would love to deep dive into the rest of the like lives of the 22 men that got rescued, but I can only imagine that like if I never saw another ship in my life, I'd be happy if I was one of them. I'd be like, I'm straight. No more boats for me. I'm just living up in the mountains by myself. That would be my next move. But yeah.
I mean, I'm looking at photos from the expedition, and it does kind of put it in context, and it makes it feel
more real.
Not so fantasy,
Yes. It's really wild when you start looking. So I definitely recommend it for everybody listening to this podcast. Go check out those photos. Just look up the Endurance mission with Shackleton, and you'll see all of them. So that luckily they brought along a photographer so they could actually experience that, and you can actually see like them dragging the lifeboats across the ice and like all those major moments. And I even believe in 2022, so last year, they actually found the Endurance at the bottom of the ocean, 10,000 feet below, right where it sank. Yes. So they actually found it, which is wild, and it's still intact, which is insane because
crazy.
From what I know about like the ocean stuff as well, like when it comes to like wooden ships, like some things deteriorate faster in salt water. And so I think due to how cold it is of the ocean in that area also led to it being a little bit more preserved for a longer time. And so like you'll see like in those photos, you'll probably see the back of like the actual Endurance ship. You'll see like a photo of it before it took the journey, as well as like it sunken underneath the ocean when we found it just a year ago.
Wow.
So kind of nuts.
Yeah, these photos are amazing. I can't. Yeah. I'm more like, like the film survived, and he was able to develop all of these, which is wild.
It is wild, but but that's my total story. I thought that'd be a really good one, and I was getting just as engrossed, kind of like building out this story together as I was obviously learning about it now. But I'm glad I was able to share that with everybody, and I'm excited to be able to share like more of that information and like all those photos and stuff on our Instagram. So if you guys aren't following, this is my shameless plug here at the very end. Please go check out Casual X History. Give us a follow. I promise I post history memes all the time, as well as like stuff relevant to these podcasts that just might add a little extra context and give you a better lay of the land for these stories. And so, I'm super excited to share those. Or don't. Yeah, if you're too cool for that, that's whatever,
Either one. I'm looking at a photo currently, so we can end this podcast. I'm looking at a photo, and it's got penguins in it, and I'm just thinking, I bet you all of those penguins didn't survive.
I bet you they didn't either. But maybe they're not the same penguins. You never know.
Oh, no, they're definitely the same penguins.
But yeah, Jeffrey, so we have one last portion. You ready for our game show element?
Let's jump in.
All right, let's do it.
Greetings, mortal listeners. It is I, Leo, the phantom that has witnessed empires rise and fall and still finds time to mock humanity's quirkiest moments. Let's embark on this week's thrilling game of Guess the Century, shall we? Be sharp, for time waits for no one, except, well, me. Throughout our game, I will unveil a series of historical events or inventions from the vast tapestry of human history. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to pinpoint precisely which century these momentous occasions took place in. But fear not, I won't leave you completely in the dark. You'll be presented with a trio of centuries to pick from. So let's get started.
All right, Jeff. Let's see if I can do better this week than last week. And just dive right into it. You ready for round one?
I'm ready.
Round one takes us back to the Renaissance, a time of artistic genius and a tad fewer plagues. When did humans finally decide that sculptures were more than just chunky rocks? Is it A, 8th century, B, 12th century, or C, 14th century?
So the question is, when did we appreciate rocks?
It's when the Renaissance begins.
Oh,
what century?
Okay.
Yes. Just to clarify, for Leo, on his behalf, of course.
Yeah. And the options are 8th, 12th, and 13th?
And 14th.
Oh, man. I'm going to go 12th. I think it's 12th. 12th to 14th. I can't remember. For some reason, I thought it was 13th. So,
yeah.
I'm going 12th. B.
Okay. I'm going to go C for 14th century. And we're going to do the answers at the very end so we can check that out. So, okay. I'm remembering.
You're not going
to
just give me the answer whether I'm right or wrong right now?
Okay.
That's tough.
All right, let's do it. Listen, all right, if you're going to complain.
I just want to know.
Okay, let's take a look at the answers here. All right, so round one, the Renaissance begins. The correct answer is C, the 14th century. So I got this one right. The Renaissance is generally considered to have begun in the 14th century, primarily in Italy. So
generally, right? So maybe
considered.
Maybe it was also generally considered in the 12th.
You're just looking for any loophole. Listen.
Yeah, it's okay. I thought it was 13th in my brain, so
that's all right. You still got two more.
Side of 50.
We still have two more, Jeffrey. You got time. You can make this up. I guarantee you're probably gonna nail the last two of these, and I'm gonna lose again.
We'll see.
I just gotta hold on to
my game.
My lead. All right, so let's jump into round two.
On to round two, knights, battles, and perhaps the earliest form of travel complaints. The First Crusade was no ordinary field trip. Which century witnessed these ambitious armored tourists? Was it A, 7th century, B, 11th century, or C, 15th century?
Yeah, I do know this one.
Do you? All right, so don't answer first, and I'm going to answer first because I don't know 100%. But between the 7th, 11th, and 15th, man, I'm going to go with B. That's probably going to be, I'm going to lock in final answer. What's yours, Jeff, since you think you know it? Yes. It's the 11th century.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Oh, are you sure? All right.
Yeah, I'm going
let's
for
double
B.
check that and make sure that we have that correct. We are correct. So the answer is B, the 11th century. The First Crusade took place in
like
1096 to 1099.
Let's go.
Look at that. Look at you.
Okay.
Good one.
That's
How did you know that?
2-1.
You read too many books, man.
No, I like the Crusade period of time.
Are you a part of that?
I'm joking. I've seen a lot of history, just like documentary, like random like TV shows and stuff. And I have a weird, attachment to the time, I guess. I don't know.
I feel like I have like all those memories stored up, but it's all jumbled. So like I have a hard time still even placing it in this game. But good job on that one. So we have one more round. So this is literally going to determine. Well, I guess we didn't split up. I guess I still technically win, but we could still do round three just for
No,
kicks.
not yet. No, not yet. We're tied.
I mean, we tied on the second one.
Yeah, so this third one we could tie, and then we'd have a tie. If you get it wrong, if you get it wrong and I get it right, it's 2-2, Jake.
I think I still win. But that's okay. All right, we'll do the third round.
What do you mean? There's three answers, Jacob. You got the first one right. You got the second one right. I only got the second one right myself.
So I would have to get this one wrong, and you get this one right for us to tie. Yep. Yeah. You're right. Okay. All right. So it's all the marbles. Here it is. You ready?
I'm ready.
Let's go.
Round three, let's plug into the modern era. The internet, where you humans replaced carrier pigeons with pixels. When did the world decide to go online and never log out? Was it A, the 18th century, B, the 20th century, or C, 21st century?
Bruh.
Yeah, no idea. You don't have any idea, right, Jeff?
Come on.
None.
This is bull crap. I get no chance here at coming back for the win.
There is another one. We could do a bonus tiebreaker round if you still want to go.
I mean, we both know this one, right? Like,
yes.
It was created in like the 60s or 70s, right? That's the answer.
Yeah, it's the 80s. Like, I think. What? So yeah, it would be between the 18th, 20th, and 21st. It's going to be B.
Wait, when the internet was created, I believe, Jacob. No, don't make me fact check me here, but I believe like the first set of the internet was like late 60s, 70s, like the technology and technically the internet was in the late 60s, 70s, right? Maybe I'm wrong.
See, like maybe this is where 80s. we can like differentiate ourselves here because I think there's like the official like
no, you're right.
Internet
right.
is 80 something, like early 80s is what I have in my brain.
Yeah, no, you're right. I think what I'm thinking of is it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what I'm thinking. So
it does
we
too.
both know what century it's created in, you know?
Oh, Jeffrey, listen to this. You're going to be so happy. The answer is B, the 20th century. The foundational concepts of the internet were actually developed in the 1960s, along with the first practical semantics for the internet not being implemented into the late 1960s and 70s.
All right.
The World Wide Web, though, was in the 80s. So that was, again,
Vindicated.
I think we were all right. Yeah, in that sort of sense.
Vindicated.
All right. So that's all 3 rounds, unless you want to go for the tiebreaker.
Let's go for one more. We got one more. Yeah,
we got one more. All right. Let's do it. We can't leave it on a tie.
And finally, round 4, the Age of Enlightenment. When people started having bright ideas, quite literally, which century was it when reason and science became the hottest trend? Was it A, the 15th century, B, the 17th century, or C, the 18th century?
Ooh, the Enlightenment, Jeffrey. Do you know this one too? Are you about to tell me that you know the answer?
I mean, nothing comes to mind. Enlightenment. Give me the options again.
So it was going to be A, which was the 14th century, I think 17th century and 18th century.
Okay, so I'm not gonna. I mean, do you want to give your answer first, or should I give mine?
I'm actually going to guess A, the 14th century.
Okay, I disagree.
Okay.
For some reason, I think it's later. I think it's one of the later two, but I don't know which one. And so this is gonna screw me up if I get the wrong one.
All right.
16th through the 17th, you said?
Yeah, so it'll be 17th or 18th centuries. Oh, sorry. Here we go. So it's the 15th century, the 17th century, or the 18th century. Sorry, I just got that written down.
Okay, so I have in my brain, I think the 1800s is too late. 17th century sounds right. 15th is too early.
Yeah, it might be too early.
You were answered though, Jake. So you're gonna.
It's probably gonna be B. It's probably gonna be B, isn't it?
I'm going for 17.
Oh my God! Don't go for the win. I swear.
It's not the win. It's just the tie.
All right. Let's see. Let's see if the tie is gonna happen. And so the last one, is C, the 18th century.
Wow.
The Age of Enlightenment was also simply known as the Enlightenment or the Age of Reason.
Yeah.
Primarily took place in the 18th century, emphasizing reason, science, and individual rights. So, wow.
Well,
so
we're both wrong.
That's okay. That means I still win, and that's fine.
Yep. Two in a row. Or no, never mind. You didn't win last week, did you?
No. Last week you definitely won. You're too good at these kind of guessing games, man. You do too good of a job. You always have them tied to something else, and that helps you with these games.
Yeah, it's just how my memory works, but it's not. There's a lot of like faults in it. It's good for certain things and really horrible for other things. I can't remember where I put my keys, but I can remember because I watched a history doc, maybe a roundabout area of like time framing of the Crusade.
Hey man,
like,
if you got it, use it. That's what I say.
Random connections, but
heck yeah. Well, awesome.
Yeah, man. Well, another podcast in the books.
That's right.
Thank you, everyone. If you've made it this far, we appreciate you listening. Give us a follow on social media if you care to. Casual X History. We post new podcasts every week. I'm going to be gearing up for the next story.
Heck yeah.
And that's really all I got, Jake. Anything else?
No, that's it. Thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you guys next week.